Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a really crucial topic, navigating health insurance here in Thailand, specifically for you, our listener, who's maybe just moved on from employment.
Yeah, we've waded through quite a bit. Firsthand accounts on expat forums, articles laying out, the common insurance traps.
And our goal is pretty simple, really. Equip you with the essential knowledge to understand your choices and hopefully dodge potential problems.
Exactly. So you've spent the last 8 years here. You had that employer-provided private health cover, been part of the SSO system. Now you're entering this new phase, and keeping solid health coverage is, well, understandably a top concern. You're looking at a few key paths, maybe continuing your existing private plan on your own dime, exploring the SSO public healthcare system perhaps for the first time, and just getting a handle on what protections are actually in place for insurance customers in Thailand.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We're going to really dig into what it means to stick with your current private insurer, what you can realistically expect from the SSO. The regulations meant to protect you, the consumer, and, maybe more importantly, where they might fall short.
And some actionable strategies for navigating that whole claims process successfully.
Definitely. We'll even touch on that big question mark around the SSO pension lump sum and how that could impact your health coverage decisions.
Yeah, there's a lot there. Prepare for some hopefully insightful and practical advice.
Okay, so let's start with the private insurance you're thinking about keeping.
Right. A recurring theme that came up in the forums was this feeling of being, well, somewhat stuck. The Globinata, for instance, shared this. They felt that because of their age and some pre-existing conditions that developed while they recovered, switching insurers now would likely mean facing exclusions or just, much higher premiums.
Yeah, that locked-in feeling. It really hits home, doesn't it? It sort of highlights how limited your options can feel when it comes to negotiating price or even just shopping around.
Totally. And it's not just a feeling. Cheryl, another contributor, was quite clear. Thai regulations, even the newer ones, don't actually prevent insurers from excluding pre-existing conditions.
So your situation, the hypercholesterolemia, maybe the family history of heart disease, although family history itself might be less of a direct factor, they're likely going to scrutinize that. You should probably be prepared for the hypercholesterolemia to potentially mean a substantial premium hike or maybe even a specific exclusion.
Even with the newer standards allowing for that, it seems like maybe well-managed conditions might be viewed a bit more favorably, but it's not guaranteed.
Right.
And it's really vital to understand how premiums work here, too. Insurers can set premiums based on age, and historically, they could even raise them for individuals based purely on their claims history.
Ah, okay.
But Lepik pointed out a really important development, this new health standard regulation. It came into effect in 2022, but crucially, it's for new contracts.
New contracts since 2022. Okay, this is where it gets interesting. So the rules are actually different depending on when your policy started.
Exactly. This new standard, it guarantees contract renewal. So the insurance company can't just, drop you if you suddenly have a big claim.
That's huge.
Yeah. And it forbids premium increases based solely on your individual claim history. Now, premium adjustments, they can only be tied to age, your occupation, and the overall claims experience of the insurer's entire portfolio, affecting everyone in a similar risk group.
Okay, so that's much more like what you might see in, say, Europe, as Lepik mentioned.
Precisely.
So, bottom line, if your current policy started before 2022, those older rules about individual premium hikes based on your claims, they could still apply.
Definitely worth checking that policy start date.
For sure. And Cheryl also floated the idea of looking into internationally issued expat policies, from Western-based insurers. They operate under different rules.
That's another avenue, yeah. A valuable option to explore. These international policies, they might offer broader coverage, maybe different ways of assessing risk.
Right.
But, as Cheryl also cautioned, pre-existing conditions will still be a major factor for those plans, too.
No.
You'd still have to apply, go through their underwriting, see what terms they offer. No guarantees there either.
Right. Okay. Let's switch gears then. Let's talk about the SSO, the public healthcare system you're also considering.
Okay.
Globinata mentioned some concerns, understandable ones, about the quality of care in public hospitals, maybe especially outside Bangkok, and also the process, having to choose a specific designated hospital.
Yeah, those are fair points, especially if you're used to the private system. But it's important to get the full picture. Press Knox shared some really compelling stories, actually, first-hand accounts from friends who got excellent care for pretty serious health issues at government hospitals.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and often at a much, much lower cost than private. There was this one story about someone with a serious hip fracture recovered well, and the cost was very manageable. It's quite powerful hearing that.
That kind of story definitely makes you uh, reconsider some assumptions about public health care here. But then you've got Joe Pye mentioning the typically long wait times.
Yeah, yes, the queues.
Initial appointments often with a GP before you even get to a specialist. And location matters too, apparently.
Right.
So it's maybe reassuring for major issues, quality-wise. But what about just the day-to-day stuff? Less critical things. Are those long queues a big deterrent for, like, routine checkups?
That's a crucial practical point. The ease of access for routine stuff might be quite different, even if the care for big events is good.
And the cost. Joe Pye initially said SSO treatment is free.
Yeah, but Presnok quickly jumped in to clarify. Their friends did pay, but they were apparently very happy with how much they paid. The costs were reasonable.
Okay, so not free, but potentially much more affordable than private, especially for those major incidents.
But Cheryl added that important word of caution. Even in government hospitals, things like specialized surgeries, extended ICU stays, those can still rack up significant costs.
Good point. It highlights you really need to understand what SSO covers and what might still be out of pocket.
Absolutely. And Eto and Shurdlu offered some really smart advice here. They said, basically, even if you're leaning towards keeping private insurance, don't just ditch your SSO coverage.
Keep paying into it.
Yeah, keep paying those monthly premiums as a safety net. Especially because, as we said, private policies often exclude pre-existing conditions. Globe and Auto actually confirmed they were planning to switch to Section 39, the self-funded option specifically to maintain that SSO coverage.
So it sounds like maybe a multi-layered strategy could be the way to go. Keep the private for some things, but have the SSO as a fallback.
Could be a very sensible approach for many people.
Okay. Now, what about protections for private insurance customers in Thailand? Cheryl described the situation as having, let's say, weaker consumer protections compared to Western countries.
Right, especially concerning those pre-existing condition exclusions and, historically at least, those individual premium hikes based on claims history.
That was the old way, though.
That was largely the situation under the older regulations, yes. But, as we discussed, that new health standard since 2022 has brought in some pretty significant improvements, but again, only for new contracts issued after that date.
Right, Lepic emphasized that. Guaranteed renewal. No premium hikes just because you claim.
Exactly. Increases are now tied to broader factors. Age, occupation, the overall portfolio performance.
So the regulatory environment is definitely shifting, which is good to know, but it really hammers home how important it is to know when your specific policy was issued. That determines which rule book applies.
Absolutely crucial.
Now let's talk about something nobody wants, having an insurance claim denied. Charlie H's article laid out some common reasons this happens in Thailand.
And what's really striking is how often it seems to come down to simple administrative stuff. Missing or incorrect paperwork like treatment details aren't clear or the bills aren't itemized properly. That's a major one.
Just basic paperwork errors. Wow.
Then you've got issues like ineligible or uncovered treatment. Maybe the policy expired or you were still in a waiting period or the condition just wasn't covered by your particular plan.
Okay, makes sense.
What else? Procedural errors also seem surprisingly common. Filing the claim too late, missing the deadline, submitting the same claim twice by accident, even just typos in names or putting down the wrong policy number.
Simple mistakes causing big problems.
Exactly. And then there are the more technical things like coding errors on the medical bills, and of course those exclusions we keep mentioning. Pre-existing conditions going over your policy limits, or the insurer deciding the treatment wasn't, in their view, medically necessary.
Okay, so quite a few potential pitfalls. How do you avoid them? Charlie H's article had some practical tips, right?
Yes, very practical. First off, creating a claims checklist seems fundamental. Keep thorough records, past claims, medical certificates, all your receipts, policy numbers. Just have it organized.
Like a claims toolkit.
Kind of, yeah. And confirming your coverage before you get treatment, especially for bigger things like surgeries or specialist visits where you might need pre-authorization, that's really key.
Makes sense. Don't assume, verify.
Exactly. And using hospitals and clinics that are in your insurer's network, that can make things a lot smoother. Often means direct billing, less paperwork for you personally.
Okay, good tip. Use the network.
And don't underestimate getting complete medical reports and properly itemized bills. Get translations if you need them. Submit everything promptly, ideally within that 30-day window usually mentioned. And just double check, triple check every detail. Name, policy number, medical codes, dates.
Meticulousness pays off, basically.
It really seems to. Technology can help too, right? Lots of insurers now have online claim submission, tracking through websites or apps that can cut down errors, give you more visibility.
Some platforms even do automated checks to see if treatment might be covered before you go ahead.
Yeah, some offer that, which is pretty handy.
And choosing the right insurer in the first place obviously helps. Look for transparency, a strong hospital network, responsive support in English or your language.
Right. Cigna actually got a specific mention as a potentially good option for expats because of those factors. Plus, things like comprehensive coverage, high annual limits, chronic illness care, evacuation, preventive stuff, customizable add-ons.
Good to know. It's also really vital, though, to be super aware of the common exclusions. The articles from Pacific Prime and Muang Thai Agent listed quite a few.
Oh yeah, extensive lists. Things you might expect, like injuries from natural disasters, extreme sports, illegal activities, self-inflicted injuries, war, terrorism.
The obvious ones.
Right. But also things like routine dental and optical care are often excluded or need an extra add-on policy with waiting periods. Same for maternity care and fertility treatment, often long waits and specific conditions apply.
So beyond the daredevil stuff, things like teeth, eyes, babies, pre-existing conditions, they often need special attention or just aren't covered standardly.
Precisely. You'll also often see exclusions for cosmetic surgery unless it's medically necessary after an accident. Health cover outside Thailand unless you have a specific international plan. Behavioral disorders, sleep disorders, treatment purely for obesity. The Thai sources added even more detail. Congenital conditions, though the new health standard has a potential exception if it appears after age 16 and the policy's been active over a year. Specific cosmetic stuff beyond accident repair, pregnancy, childbirth, except maybe ectopic pregnancy under the new standard, STDs, anti-aging treatments, general checkups, LASIK, most dental work, addiction treatment, mental health conditions, sleep apnea, vaccinations, except maybe rabies tetanus post-injury, alternative medicine.
Wow, okay, the list goes on.
It does. Self-treatment by a doctor treating family members, suicide attempts, injuries under the influence, injuries during crime or brawls, dangerous sports participation, non-commercial aviation injuries, war, terrorism, nuclear events.
It really, really underscores the need to read that fine print, doesn't it? Know exactly what isn't covered.
Absolutely. You cannot assume.
Okay. Now, let's quickly touch on that other big piece, the SSO lump sum withdrawal.
Right. Globe and Nada's situation. They hadn't hit the 180 months of contributions needed for the pension, so they're facing this choice. Take a lump sum now, since the pension isn't an option yet.
And the big uncertainty, the core question is, does taking that lump sum affect their ability to keep the Section 39 health insurance? And what are the longer-term financial implications of potentially missing out on a future pension?
These are critical questions, huge consequences potentially. Globe and Nada specifically asked, can I keep Section 39 health cover if I take the lump sum? Has anyone done it and regretted it? Can you rejoin the pension scheme later? Is the future pension even worth enough to skip the immediate cash?
Yeah, all really valid concerns.
And interestingly, our sources, while they raise these questions really well, they don't actually give definitive answers. Not on the direct link between the lump sum and keeping Section 39 or the long-term financial trade-offs.
So it really highlights a crucial gap. For Globe and Nada, and probably for you if you're in a similar boat, the only real way forward is
direct contact with the SSO office. You absolutely need to get clear official information from them on these specific points. The rules around lump sum withdrawal, how they interact with ongoing health coverage, future pension eligibility. You need that clarity before deciding anything.
essential homework, basically.
Absolutely. So just to quickly recap the key takeaways. We sort of navigated the landscape of health insurance in Thailand after leaving a job, looked at the pros and cons of sticking with private cover, got an overview of the SSO system.
Right, highlighted the importance of understanding the regulations, especially that new health standard for newer policies.
And outlined some practical steps to hopefully avoid claim denials. Plus, we touched on that really significant decision around the SSO lump sum and its potential impact.
Hopefully this whole deep dive has brought some, clarity to the options and maybe the potential challenges you're facing, the experiences of others, the details of the regulations, those common claim pitfalls. They're all important pieces to consider as you make your choices.
Yeah, and as you weigh these options, especially that big one about the SSO lump sum, just remember that immediate financial benefit needs really careful weighing against potential long-term security and consistent access to healthcare.
Definitely.
Further investigation into your specific SSO contributions, the exact rules on withdrawal, and maybe re-enrollment, that's going to be essential.
So the final question for you, listening now,
Yeah.
what specific steps are you going to take next to get that crucial clarity for your situation?